Welcome to your dose of wowness.
Welcome to this explainer. Look, you already know the Great Pyramid of Giza is massive. Literally everyone knows that. But today, we're shifting our focus entirely. We are not just going to talk about the sheer scale of this monument. We're going to dive into the astonishing engineering precision that, frankly, still defies explanation even after 4.5 millennia. And I want to be clear right out of the gate. The numbers we're about to look at, they aren't rough estimates. These are the hard results of ultra-precise modern surveying.
Okay, let's get right into it. The base of the Great Pyramid stretches 230 meters on each side. That covers 53,000 square meters of solid desert bedrock. To put that into perspective, that is an area large enough to comfortably fit the cathedrals of Florence, Milan, St. Paul's, Westminster Abbey, and St. Peter's Basilica, all at the exact same time. Yet, across that entire colossal expanse, the foundation is level to within just 2.1 centimeters. Think about that. That's a flatness tolerance of 1 part in 10,000. It's mind-blowing.
And then consider the side lengths. When you measure the 4 massive sides of the structure, a structure that, by the way, contains roughly 2.3 million stone blocks and weighs an estimated 6 million tons, the longest side and the shortest side differ by a maximum of just 58 millimeters. That's less than the width of 3 fingers. We're talking about a variation of just 1 part in 4,000 across an absolute mountain of stone. But honestly, perhaps the most mind-bending metric of the whole shebang is the alignment. The Great Pyramid is oriented to true north to within 0.05 degrees. That's just 3 arc minutes. That makes it the most precisely north-oriented structure in the ancient world. And actually, it's more precise than a lot of modern buildings constructed today using highly advanced electronic instruments and lasers. And remember, they pulled this off in 2560 BC.
So now that we've totally shattered what you probably thought you knew about the precision of this structure, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the impossible precision problem, the world's oldest diary, scanning the big void, the internal ramp hypothesis, the unsolved Khufu mystery, and finally, the last standing wonder.
Moving right along to Section 1, the impossible precision problem, engineering without modern tools. How on earth were these crazy tolerances achieved with nothing but copper chisels, wooden sledges, and some ropes?
Seriously, before a single block was even placed, how did they level that enormous base to within 2.1 centimeters? Well, the most widely accepted theory is the ancient water trench method. It's actually super elegant in its simplicity. You cut a network of channels into the rock, fill them with water, and mark the water level, because water naturally sits perfectly flat. Then you drain the water and just chisel away the high points of the rock until everything matches your marks. But here's the catch. Executing this flawlessly across 53,000 square meters out in the open desert with 20,000 workers stomping around where a single ripple in the water could ruin your measurement, that is practically miraculous.
And aligning this 6 million ton structure to true north, that meant surveyors had to use the sky because, compasses didn't exist yet. Some researchers think they observed the arc of circumpolar stars, like Mizar and Kohob, and basically bisected the angle of their extreme positions to find a perfect north-south line. Others suggest the solar gnomon method, tracking the shadow cast by a perfectly vertical stake exactly at solar noon on the equinox. Whichever method they actually used, they executed it with an absolute breathtaking perfection that we still just marvel at today.
Let's jump into Section 2, the world's oldest diary, focusing on the human element. We're pivoting from mathematical alignments to the real logistics and the actual people behind the precision.
In 2013, inside a sealed storage chamber at the ancient harbor of Wadi el-Jarf, archaeologists made a staggering discovery. They found the Diary of Mir. This is literally the world's oldest known papyrus. Mir was an inspector, basically an ancient middle manager, who oversaw an elite gang of about 200 men. And his daily diary documents this relentless, grueling 10-day water transport cycle. They load these beautiful white limestone casing stones at the Tura quarry, sail them up the Nile into a specially built Giza canal system, unload them right at the pyramid base, and then cycle back. It is our very first direct, written proof of the incredibly complex water transport network orchestrated by this ancient bureaucracy.
And this massive logistical chain supported a highly organized workforce of 20,000 to 25,000 paid workers. How do we know that? Because archaeologists have actually excavated their villages. We found their bakeries, their breweries, and even their medical records. Skeletons show evidence of healed fractures and really carefully amputated limbs, which proves these workers received solid rations and excellent medical care. So this permanently dispels that old popular myth of slave labor. These were highly skilled, well-cared-for citizens.
Moving into Section 3, Scanning the Big Void, where modern science finally gets to look inside. Physics is now allowing us to peer through the stone without moving a single block.
The International Scan Pyramids project essentially mapped the interior using something called muon tomography. It's kind of like taking a giant medical X-ray of the pyramid. Muons are high-energy cosmic ray particles constantly raining down on us from the upper atmosphere. They penetrate heavy stone, sure, but they pass much more easily through empty space. So by placing these highly sophisticated muon detectors in and around the pyramid, scientists can map density variations and spot massive voids where there should realistically only be solid limestone.
Which brings us to November 2017. Using 3 independent muon detector configurations, they confirmed, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the largest unknown space found inside the pyramid since the 19th century. They dubbed it the Big Void. It sits high up above the Grand Gallery, and it's at least 30 meters long. Nobody living has ever been inside it. It is entirely sealed off. So, is it a hidden chamber? Is it just a structural relieving space? We just don't know yet.
Okay, Section 4, the internal ramp hypothesis, attempting to solve the engineering nightmare. How did they actually get 2.3 million heavy blocks up to a height of 146 meters? This brings us to the biggest, most hotly contested debate in all of Egyptology, the ramp problem. A traditional external ramp presents a massive mathematical trap. To pull heavy stones up to the 146-meter apex at a manageable 7-degree slope, you need an external ramp 1.6 kilometers long. That ramp would literally contain roughly the same volume of material as the Great Pyramid itself. You'd essentially have to build 2 pyramids to build one. Plus, there is zero archaeological evidence for a ramp that size. That is exactly why French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin spent 20 years developing an alternative, the internal ramp hypothesis. He proposes using a smaller external ramp just for the bottom section, and then a hidden spiral ramp winding upward just inside the outer casing stones for the rest of the build.
And Houdin's engineering analysis is just brilliant. If you look at the total volume of the pyramid, 80% of the stone mass is located in the bottom 70 meters. So a short, totally manageable external ramp works perfectly for the heavy lifting early on. Once you hit that 70-meter mark, sure, you run out of room for an external ramp, but that's totally fine because you only have the top 20% of the volume left to place. That is exactly where his proposed internal spiral ramp takes over.
Now, here is where modern physics meets architectural theory in the coolest way possible. The location of the Big Void discovered by muon tomography in 2017, it aligns perfectly with where Houdin predicted his internal ramp's main ascending corridor would be located. Now, obviously, the Scan Pyramids team is extremely cautious and hasn't explicitly confirmed it's a ramp. It's still sealed, after all. But the coincidence of a 20-year engineering prediction perfectly matching a brand-new high-tech physics discovery, that is absolutely electrifying.
Let's move to Section 5, the unsolved Khufu mystery, exploring what remains hidden. This section dives into a really profound tension in Egyptology today. There's this massive gap between what we confidently assume the Great Pyramid was used for and the physical evidence we actually have on hand. The Great Pyramid is universally labeled as a tomb, but here's the thing. No mummy has ever been found inside it. Zero funerary goods, no golden masks, no canopic jars. Nothing. Inside the king's chamber, there is a massive red granite sarcophagus, sure, but it is entirely blank. It's uninscribed and it's missing its lid. It's also so huge that it couldn't have fit through the completed passages, meaning it had to be placed in the chamber as the pyramid was being built around it. And when explorers first tunneled their way into the chamber back in the year 820 AD, they found the sarcophagus was already completely empty.
So what's the link? The primary direct written link between this pyramid and the pharaoh Khufu is a single cartouche, a royal name ring, painted in red ochre in a tiny hidden relieving chamber above the king's chamber. It was discovered in 1837 by a Victorian explorer named Howard Weiss, who, by the way, literally blasted his way in there using gunpowder. Now, to be perfectly impartial here, the mainstream Egyptological consensus accepts Weiss's cartouche as entirely authentic. However, a minority of researchers point out that Weiss was under immense financial pressure to make a major discovery, and he was completely alone when the marking was found, which leads them to question its origins. The debate over this single piece of evidence remains a really fascinating footnote in the pyramid story.
Finally, Section 6, the last standing wonder, 4,500 years of defiance. After dissecting all the math, the scans, and the mysteries, we have to look at its legacy.
The lighthouse of Alexandria has crumbled into the sea. The hanging gardens of Babylon are lost to myth. The Colossus of Rhodes fell in an earthquake centuries ago. But the Great Pyramid survives complete. It has outlasted entire empires, survived the rise and fall of whole civilizations, weathered Roman occupations, world wars, and 4,500 years of relentless desert sun. The civilization that commissioned it is long gone, but their greatest achievement is still standing right there.
Look, it's really tempting to look at a 2.1 centimeter leveling tolerance, or a true north alignment, and immediately assume aliens or lost magic must have been involved. But they weren't. Ancient humans achieved mechanical and organizational feats with pure human ingenuity, using the minds and hands of their time that we still struggle to reverse engineer today. They were fully modern people in their cognitive abilities. When motivated, incredibly well organized, and persistent, their capabilities vastly exceeded what we tend to give them credit for.
So, I leave you with this final thought. The Great Pyramid is still giving up its secrets. And not because it's actively hiding them, but because we are only just now developing the tools, like cosmic ray muon tomography, to read what it has actually been showing us all along. As scanning technologies continue to advance, what else is sealed inside that big void? What else is waiting inside the last standing wonder of the ancient world for us to finally see? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking questions and keep learning.